Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for coming, and thank you, James, for the great work that you do in presenting the reading series here. We're all going to take turns, as he said, introducing each other. So I'm introducing Ellen tonight. And Ellen Steinbaum is an award-winning journalist and a former Boston Globe columnist. Her blog is Reading and Writing and the Occasional Recipe. And it can be found on her website, which is Ellen Steinbaum, STEINBAUM.com. Actually, it was through her blog that I first met her, I believe. She invited me to contribute, to offer a poem and sort of, some commentary on how the poem came about. And we met around the corner at, sadly, the former Cafe Pamplona. And we sat outside at a table there. I know we all miss that place. Ellen is the author of 5 poetry books and a one-person play. Her work has been nominated twice for a Pushcart Prize, and it's included in several anthologies, including The Widow's Handbook, Garrison Keillor's Good Poems, American Places, and A Mighty Room, a collection of poems written in Emily Dickinson's bedroom. So please welcome Ellen Steinbaum.
Thank you. We can only get up one at a time. I have to say, I got here early and I watched James transform this space, and he's amazing, totally amazing. Thank you all for being here. Thank you to the people who are on Zoom. This is so exciting. I had the pleasure of reading here once before, a number of years ago when M.F.A was here, and it's just such a delight to be here and an honor, and just oh, sorry. Okay, got it. Okay, so I'm going to start. This is my new book, and I'm so excited about the cover. Is this beautiful? Yeah. It's a painting by David Lloyd Brown, who is a retired teacher at the museum school, is a active, wonderful painter with a studio in the South End. And anyhow, I saw this just as I was trying to figure out what I'd like on the cover, and wow, knocked out. So I'm going to start with the first poem in the book. And those of you who've heard me before, I apologize because I seem to always start with this. But, when you've got a poem about cockroaches, you just have to go with it. How could you skip? This is called Commitment. The story I am finding charming, would you believe, is about cockroaches. Pairs of them, an Asian species, Salginea taiwanensis, and even stranger, about their taste for each other. Yes, actually, slight cannibalism. No, listen, it's not quite as disgusting as it sounds. The pairs are newly mated, moving into new homes where they will raise their babies, and they begin by taking turns chewing on each other's wings, eating them down to stubs, each lying quietly while the other feasts. And although, yes, I find this idea disgusting, and though I hope that their homes are not near mine, don't you too find it an endearing way to start a life together, promising that you will never fly away? Belonging. The second time I saw the mouse, I was merely startled as it skittered across the floor and disappeared behind a chair, hurrying as if it had entered our home by accident and was sorry for intruding. It was tiny, round, a wind-up toy mouse, a Beatrix Potter mouse, like a pet I didn't know I had. We bought a gadget that emits a sound we can't hear, designed to persuade the mouse to self-deport. Our mouse, not like when I saw that shockingly large hole in the garden and the pile of excavated dirt beside it and could not summon slaughter fast enough at just the thought of that large, dark body and horrifying tail. Instinct is quick to order, assign rank, rat or squirrel, caterpillar, worm, graceful dragonfly on painted melon, or scuttling roach in kitchen cabinet. What we tolerate or banish, what charms and what disgusts, what trespasses and what is allowed to build a fence around its space and name it home. So I'm conscious of being in a space with all these poetry molecules flying around, and I don't tend to write in received forms hardly at all, but just as a shout out to in homage to the space, the couple of things that are at least a little related to received forms are things I'd like to read tonight. So this is then an ekphrastic poem. 3 Peaches on a Stone Ledge with a Painted Lady Butterfly by Adrian Court. Even in grainy newsprint, I cannot get enough, can't look away. The painting has, it says here, just been sold for more than $3 million. The number printed almost the size of the leaves on one peach, the one half hidden on the left. The other 2 turn blushing backs to us. One has a small brown bruise. The butterfly heads for the fruit, intention bright against the dark background. What draws us like candle flame? This is not Court's only fruit with butterfly. He's used this stone ledge too for the asparagus, the shells. I wonder how the butterfly was managed. Quick sketch, then paint from memory, nuance of line and color held in mind. Or was the butterfly that looks so alive in paint really a dead and fastened prop? There's more painting. In the Dutch room, which, of course, we Bostonian area people know, when Isabella held a celebration dinner for Harvard's football team when they beat Yale in 1909, Rembrandt's self-portrait, age 23, in an extravagantly feathered hat with soft hair and unlined face, hangs near where his slightly older self once was, etched only 3 or 4 years later, but heavier, with a more knowing look, so small you might have used a magnifying glass to see the detail. But the younger Rembrandt, lucky for him, was painted on wood panel, too cumbersome to whisk away, and so remains, continuing to look, his eyebrows arched, mouth opening in surprise toward the empty frames. Now that I know the story, I just want to tell you this is based on something that I read in Clint Smith's excellent book, How the Word is Passed. And I had never before heard about Seneca Village, which is located where, which was located where Central Park is in New York today. Now that I know the story, I cannot get it out of my mind, but it is not my story. And I may not have the right to tell it, but I cannot not tell it, cannot, knowing now what I did not know, cannot stay as silent as the years since then have been, as the buried bones have been. I cannot stay silent now that I know, even though it is not my story and they were not my people, but they were people who lived together, not my people, but people, free men of property who could vote, who farmed, prayed, sent their children to the school until the city said the land, not yet, but someday, right in the middle, in the heart, that not yet, but someday, ringed by tall buildings, was starting that day, too valuable for small people. And even though it is not my story, but it is a story of people, I will tell how the village was erased, the people blotted out, how the large city tore up the farms, tore down the homes, the school, 3 churches where Black, Irish, and German sat together in the pews, now driven from the land they worked. And you can read about the land acquired from the squatters who lived right there in the heart of the city on a few small, squalid farms. And even though it is not my story, it is people's story. And now that I know, I cannot stay silent, cannot get it out of my mind. And this is a golden shovel, another form, though a more recent form. This is based on a Gwendolyn Brooks poem, and I will read the end words so you can have that. We are each other's harvest. We are each other's business. We are each other's magnitude and bond. Have we forgotten that we inhabit this world together, are breathing the same air, are each occupying the inches of others' spaces, and must reap our harvest together? We can see that we are tillers of the same earth, are watching for the same rain, each walking the rows, each other's tools in our hands. Each our business the same, our work, what we must do together if we are to survive. We examine each offered gift, ours and others, humbled by the magnitude of what is before us and what must be our mutual bond. The long weekend, oh, no, that's not, excuse me, that's not the one that I meant to read. Sorry. Memorial Day. This is the one that Memorial Day. We've been lucky so far, he says. And though it's clear he's talking about the not too bad holiday traffic on the Mass Pike, the metaphor's too obvious to ignore. And so we smile and shrug our shoulders and continue heading east into the light traffic, grateful. When baby Jessica fell down the well, I've been thinking about how divided our country is and how there was a time when obviously we seemed more together. When baby Jessica fell down the well, the whole country stopped and held its breath, prayed for rescue that took 56 hours while Jessica sang about Winnie the Pooh. Do you remember this? She was 18 months old and it was 1987. And everyone wished they could help. Everyone watched. Everyone waited. When I was thinking about this, I was kind of shocked at how, it wasn't that long ago. I thought I remembered it maybe in the 50s.
Yeah.
1987. Here's another golden shovel poem. And this is called Preamble, and it is based on the preamble. The dream is this, that we, living in this land, with the interweavings of its various people, of its varied people, seeking a way for the good of us all, for what can lift us to the place where we see how united we are, and where each of us states unafraid what we believe in and must do to create an order that welcomes all our voices to ring out, and where we see the form our chorus takes when we sing it to a song together. Voices lifted ever more strongly, and though not perfect, harmonizing in a vision of union. The man who was swallowed by a whale off Cape Cod was more tasted than swallowed, taken into the mouth, but not drawn down into the cavernous bulk, where Jonah, so legend goes, spent 3 days and 3 nights after being flung from the boat on the way to Tarshish. Not swallowed, but scooped up, sucked into the hot, wet, terrifying, dark, rank, and airless, like a quick glimpse of hell. Not like Geppetto gulped down, or Pinocchio after him, though they were both fiction, or James Bartley, who was real, in the late 1890s, found alive in the stomach of a dead harpooned whale. But this time, in less than a minute, spat out like a hair, bit of eggshell. It must have felt like an eternity, but less than a minute. Not enough time to think of a Gourd or Nineveh or other great cities where there were 600,000 persons atoning for sin, and also much cattle. And here's another acrostic poem. This is Esau selling his birthright to Jacob. It's after a painting by Kleistwert that was done in 1633. The pleader's back is to us. We cannot see his face, the hunger, the eyes fixed on the bone. What we can see is Jacob's smooth hand moving closer to the bowl, while Esau grabs it in both hairy hands and pulls it to himself. And even if we didn't know, we'd know this transaction is not likely to end well. Even the watchful dog, a smooth, non-biblical looking hound, seems worried, edges his nose up to the table, pointed face urging reconsideration, while the other dog looks as though he's wondering what's the harm in reaching out a hand and angling for blessing. I'm going to end with the intervening day. My husband's birthday is August 16th, and our anniversary is August 18th. So this is the intervening day, we call it, the day between his birthday and our anniversary, between the beginning of his days and the formal beginning of our days together. Between these two occasions for cards and cakes, good wishes, celebrations, this one day that has no ritual, just an everyday day. A day we notice perhaps only because it sits sandwiched between the two momentous ones. a day when nothing further is required than our simple gratitude for one more ordinary day. Thank you. My next reader is Helena Minton, whose most recent collection, right up there, beautifully for sale, is Paris Paint Box New and Selected Poems. And the title sequence explores the life and work of the French Impressionist painter Berthe Morisot. And if you go right now, not right now, to the Isabella Stewart Gardner and see the Manet exhibit, you will see some, I think there's a painting by her, and there's certainly a painting of her by her brother-in-law, Edouard Bonnet. And Helena's other books include The Canal Bed, The Gardener and the Bees, and The Raincoat Colors. Her poems have appeared in a variety of journals, including Poetry, the Lloyd Poetry Journal, the Lowell Review, and Ibbotson Street. Her poems have also been anthologized in Raising Lily Ledbetter. Yay! Poets, women poets occupy the word space, and Nasty Women Poets. Sounds terrific. An unapologetic anthology of subversive verse. She's a former public library director and has taught English composition and creative writing. Helena.
Thank you. Wait, no, you it's like one of those little Rubik's puzzles. Yeah. Oh dear.
Okay. Yes.
Hello, everybody.
Yes.
Boy, I don't have space to put something. I have to change my glasses. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Thank you, James. We've had this wonderful series going on for quite a while. And thank you to Mary, because you kind of got us organized and beautiful reading. And it's an honor to be here at the Grolier this evening. Oh, I'm supposed to talk. Is that better?
Yes.
The trouble is I've got to change my glasses, sorry. And then I don't want to lose these. Excuse me. I can't really see all of you, it's kind of blurry. But, and Grolier has always loomed large in my life, my poetry life, although I haven't been here in a long time. It's gotten harder to get here. But I used to make many pilgrimages, and I'm so grateful to the late Ifeanyi Menkidi and his family for making sure the store endures. And it's really terrific. The first poem I'd like to read is called Drift. It's a new poem. It's not in the book. Drift. At 6 a.m., I open the door to retrieve the newspaper in early rain. Birds persisting into it. Leaves shaking slightly above the lawn. I smell the drift of lilacs from blocks away. Utopia, I was scolded for saying in a dream that woke me, hushed, shaken by the shoulders. A word forbidden. I had no business speaking or thinking it. Downtown, a woman carries something pale in a dry cleaning bag. The wind delicately lifts the cellophane. Hints of a wedding, maybe a white one, a day when I'm waiting to be invited. Before the violet lilacs form a powdery gray, their scent evaporates, a thought subsumed in a pocket of air. This is a poem, it's called Hawthorne's Old Manse. And I had wanted it to be was starting out hoping it was going to be a portrait poem, self-portrait with window pane. I've been determined to write such a poem, and I know several people have very successfully done that, and I haven't. Someone said, no, that's not what it is. So this is what it turned into. Hawthorne's Old Manse.
Welcome to Harvard.
The tour guide wants me, oh, my squeaking here. The tour guide wants me to see how one pane in the old glass was scratched by a diamond ring. The author's wife's name, Sophia, in watery script, still visible after 200 years. A detail a visitor on her own might miss. But the only thing I remember, excuse me, all these years after my father brought me here. Dusk is rolling in on mist over the Concord River. Now I stop listening. My mind wanders past the velvet rope up the stairs, forbidden to visitors. In one room, a table is set as if for tea. Idly, I think someone has to keep the cups dusted, to straighten the lace tablecloth each day. Someone has to keep up with history, keep it in its place, although history, like the river, keeps shifting. If I look twice, I see the green wing chair in the corner where my father would have sat down to read. Now I would like to read two poems about Belmore. So her dates, she lived from 1841 to 1895 in Paris. She was born in Bougival, which is actually in Versailles, right near the city. It's outside. And I read that this house where she lived parts of the summer is now a museum. It's just opening. I think I saw online December 1st. I found this out by chance. So next time in Paris, you can visit that. In this poem, I am imagining her reading Darwin. Questions for Mr. Darwin. There's a quote here. I am reading Darwin. It is scarcely reading for a woman, even less for a girl. And this was from a letter in 1874. The tortoise entered my dream last night with his creeping gait. I read gentlemen ride them like horses. Could I paint such a creature or climb on its mud-green back? With colored pencil, I sketch brown sparrows on my front step, a caged blue parrot, my yellow lovebirds. Could I sit beside you, Mr. Darwin, with my aquarelles, steal from your scientist's eye as you draw in black ink your trembling finches, a multitude of beaks, feathers, wings, across the page in a line so subtle I can't identify the changes. On Isabella Island, white seabirds pant in the noon heat. I see their tongues, and in the shallows around the boulders, coral spreads its alizarin crimson fan, like the sun rising underwater. Could its rays touch our Paris grays in a world turned upside down? And this next is a ekphrastic poem about one of her paintings. I'm sorry, I'm not going to find it here. It's excuse me. I have it marked.
That's going anywhere.
Not going to get out fast, can you? This is called Young Girl Reading, and it was painted in 1888. And the young girl in painting is her daughter, Julie. She painted many paintings, drawings of her. It's her main subject. To go into oneself and close the door of the cage. To make oneself into a small bird in a cage, not singing but silent. To be lost in thought in the heat of the conservatory, ordinary sun beating on the glass, to feel the brush strokes action. By staying quiet, one appears obedient. To be at the center of unruly brushstrokes, one feather among wild, frenzied feathers scratchy on the canvas, caught in a maelstrom, orange, red, green cacophony, oil that at first resembles pastel or colored pencil, brushstrokes like feathers in a whirlwind. To turn the pages one after the other, to feel the ruffled pages lift their wings, to be quiet when the bird inside is not. And this next one is actually another painting by a very different artist, Paula Modersohn-Becker, who her dates, she was a little later than Laura, so she didn't live very long, 1876 to 1907. And she lived in Germany, but it was terrible starvation. And I remember seeing an exhibit, the Clark was women painters in Paris from 1850 to 1900. And that just struck me as such a totally different milieu than the one that Morisot was living and working in. This is three boys bathing by a canal and painted in 1901. They have goosebumps, never get enough to eat, these boys who look like old men, naked in the village of Warpsveda. They cut through dead stalks to get here, hunting for something shared between them. One with distended belly, curious, another white blonde hair, the third all scowl and challenge, beside the shrill grass, a tin stripe of water. No sun burns through. It isn't swimming weather, isn't fun. They are staring up. She must be on a rise, a face-off between them, manners stripped of veneer, begrudging her a look. And this one is called At Collins Pond, which is a totally different landscape. It's a Harold Parker forest right near where I live, and I spend a lot of time there, hiking and being there, walking with friends. Heron on the end of a log, December, staring down. He has an itch and scratches his belly for more than a minute, long enough that we can really see a simple, private moment in his day, not his overhead, majestic self, the one we have infused with symbolism. It's rare to see a heron close up or without his wings spread. Satisfied, he lifts one leg way up under him and waits. Once a deer passed ghostly among the trees. We weren't sure we'd seen it, if that's what we saw, and we talk about it from time to time, reminding each other. Remember when we thought we saw or almost saw the deer? And the memory is as faint as the day the pheasants were released from the old truck and of our finds underfoot. A toad alert in the leaves, a lady slipper shadow, a sandy hornet's nest of stings, the feather lying in the fire road. And I'd like to read one more. It's called Letter to My Mother. Early that morning, we spoke on the phone as we always did, agreeing we'd talk again later on in the day. I can't remember what we talked about, but one of us had to hang up before we were done, agreeing we'd talk again later on in the day. Because we always talked every day, it didn't matter if one of us had to hang up before we were done. We knew we could pick up the thread the next time we talked. Because we talked every day, I didn't think twice when the phone rang again. But this time a stranger was saying your name. So it wasn't the moment to pick up the thread. I was told you said you were tired and sat down in a chair in the hall. The stranger was saying your name in a delicate voice. You would not come to the phone again to pick up the thread of whatever we talked about, the little details of our daily lives that September morning, the last time we spoke on the phone, as we always did. Thank you. And, I'd like to introduce Charles. And I'm very honored to be reading with you, Charles. And I've never met you. It's nice. Charles Coe is the author of 5 books of poetry, all published by Leapfrog Press. His latest is Charles Coe, New and Selected Works, which is over there. He is also the author of 2014's Spin Cycles, a novella published by Gemma Media that tells the story of a homeless man surviving on the streets of Boston. Charles was a 2017 artist in residence for the city of Boston, where he created an oral history project focused on residents of Mission Hill. He has been chosen as a literary light by the Associates of the Boston Public Library. He is an adjunct professor of English at Salve Regina University in Newport, Rhode Island, and at Bay Path University in Longmeadow, Massachusetts, where he teaches in both M.F.A. writing programs. He is on the steering committee of the Boston chapter of the National Writers Union, a labor union that serves freelance writers. Welcome, Charles.
We'll do our dance. Let me stand behind you there.
I know. Let's see. I think I'm gonna take these off. Okay. I'll get that book. Get the bookmark later. Oh, you don't.
You're welcome. Good evening, everybody. It's great to see these shining faces. James, thank you so much. Where are you at, Bob? Where are you at? Well, thanks for your hospitality, as always. And it's such a pleasure to read in the longest continuously operating poetry bookshop in the United States of America. So let's do this. I'm going to read some new stuff. It's a couple both things. This is my latest volume. It's new and selected works. It's got some new stuff and some stuff in my first 5 books. And just going to get to it.
Charles, will you step a little closer to the mic?
What's that? Is that better?
That's better.
Okay. Okay. So, Ellen, it was fun to hear you read that poem about Jonah, because I just read a quote recently by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. He said, "The fiction was invented the day Jonah told his wife he was 3 days late because he got swallowed by a whale." So I'm going to start with Prelude. Before we begin, may I ask you a question? Would it bother you if at some point I forgot to remember the illusion that we are made of solid matter, that we instead consist of atoms and electrical charges, or 99% empty space? Would it bother you to look through my suddenly spectral form and see the backrest of my chair? It wouldn't be intentional, a parlor trick. It's just that when I think about broken children lying in the rubble of bombed out buildings, I sometimes find it difficult to remain tied to this world. So if I seem to fade, please don't judge or be alarmed. Just hold out your hand. We can touch palm to palm to keep ourselves connected to this terrible and beautiful place. Remind us we are made of the same stuff as the stars. This tomato. Tonight's dinner is a single tomato, a massive heirloom, ruby red, wrinkled, irregularly shaped, local, perfectly ripe, sliced thick, sprinkled with salt. I never bother with tomatoes in the off-season. Those billiard balls shipped cross country, pick green, gas to turn them red. When the good tomatoes are done, my tongue's attention turns elsewhere. When I was young and waved goodbye to friends who'd packed their lives into cars and headed down the road, I always assumed I'd see them again someday. Some I never did, never will. I hope I'm here to greet next year's crop, but now I take nothing for granted. Tonight's tomato, this tomato, is an exercise in the ephemeral, a juicy vine-ripened reminder of time's blinking eye. I'm from Indianapolis, and mulberry bushes and trees are everywhere. I think you have mulberries in New England, but they're not a big deal here. But when I was a kid, we were all over them. And they didn't just grow in bushes, there were these huge trees. And there was a huge tree in the park that my friends and I played in. And so this is mulberries. One day near the end of summer vacation, when all the easily picked berries had been plundered, a few buddies and I climbed the tallest mulberry tree in Military Park on a dare to the highest branches that would support our weight, and lying back on sturdy limbs, lounging like young lords, reached out to pluck those darkest berries beyond the reach of earthbound peasants. Our only competition, the indignant birds who complained at the intrusion before fluttering off. With machine-like efficiency, we dispatched those berries, bursting with juice that dyed our lips and tongues and teeth purple, ran down our chins, eating our fill beyond our fill. We finally slowed, leaning back on our thrones in the sky. Down on the ground, the world carried on in the usual way. There was the distant cry of a baby in a carriage, the rumble of a truck like muted thunder, and all the while creeping up like a slow-moving fog, the inevitability of sixth grade, of starched nuns and math homework, and one more step toward distant, unimaginable adulthood. We had no words for any of this. We just felt it in our muscles, our bones. As golden light filtered through the leaves and late afternoon melted into early evening, we knew our mothers stood on porches and back stoops, waiting to call us to suppers for which we now had no room. The hard branches had begun to punish our backs, and the rough bark shape our skin, so on some silent signal, like birds changing course mid-flight, we began the descent, coming down more carefully than we climbed, returning reluctantly to the ordinary world. I write a lot about music. I'm a musician, I'm a singer, and I play guitar. I play and teach didgeridoo, and which is kind of weird. But I'm in a music ensemble called Symphony of Crickets. We just had a gig at Arts at the Armory a couple of weeks ago. And last spring, I heard the Blind Boys of Alabama there. Anybody familiar with the Blind Boys of Alabama? Oh, they're incredible. So I wrote this. This is Sanctified. When the blind boys of Alabama kick into high gear, a hole is ripped in the fabric of the universe through which you will tumble to find yourself in a storefront Baptist church in Selma, Alabama, with no air conditioning on the hottest day of the summer at Sunday service, where shouts pouring from the open windows are heard a block away. And Sister Hattie, whose magnificent hat is the love child of Mount Kilimanjaro and the Sydney Opera House, is fanning herself with one hand and with the other dabbing at the glow on her cheek with a lace hanky. Those guys were amazing. We've had some ekphrastic poetry tonight, which is cool. So I'll read an ekphrastic poem. Somebody said on social media that the people who don't want their grandchildren taught in school that people threw rocks at Ruby Bridges were the people who were throwing rocks at Ruby Bridges. So we've all seen that Rockwell painting of Ruby, right, going into the school. So this is for Ruby Bridges, who is, by the way, alive and well. She runs a wonderful foundation down south, social justice. She's amazing. So this is for Ruby Bridges. In the Norman Rockwell painting, Ruby Bridges, the problem we all live with, you were being escorted into the segregated school by federal marshals. We see 4 of them in the frame, 2 walking ahead, 2 behind, but we don't see their faces. You're the focus of the piece. A thrown tomato is smashed on the wall behind you. You walk straight ahead past the red guts dripping down and piled on the sidewalk, past the faint ghost of nigger painted on the wall someone tried with limited success to sponge away. Ruby, what can we possibly say about you? What words can describe this 6-year-old child armed with a notebook and ruler, walking resolutely past that pack of jabbering hyenas, past the woman who every day threatened to poison you, past the woman who every day waved before your face a black doll in a coffin? The lead marshal said you never cried once during that nightmare year. What can we possibly say about you? Brave as any astronaut climbing into a tin can to be launched into the airless void. Haiku for George Floyd. That final moment when you called out for mama, did birds go silent? And this is the last of the new pieces. And I know I'm kind of a knucklehead for this title, but sometimes you just can't help yourself, right? You got to do what you got to do. So this is Nocturnal Admissions. Yeah. Late at night, and I reluctantly shed the cocoon of blankets, rise once again to perform that task so familiar to men of a certain age, and afterwards look for a moment in the bathroom mirror at the battalion of wrinkles whose comrades wait patiently to join their ranks. I look at my hair, what's left of it, mostly white as a sheet of typing paper, then shut off the light and go back to bed to burrow once more beneath the covers, but as sometimes happens, sleep has climbed out the window, dropped quietly to the grass, and headed off barefoot into the night. At times like this, one's shortcomings and failures and disappointments can return to take their bows. Projected on the ceiling, images on parade, I nod to each member of the troop and accept each judgment in turn. Some debts I can never repay. Others will never be repaid to me. But even though the list of things I thought I knew grows ever smaller and the tang of ancient grief still lingers on my tongue, I realize I've made my peace with the past. And to my surprise, sleep returns. I awake to sun shining through the window. Hear a mockingbird declare itself master of the universe. Now that my nocturnal ghosts have faded once more into memory and mist, I will rise to face this new day that stretches out before me like a ribbon of new highway. And I'll just do a few more. Sometimes a title just sort of sneaks up on you. And again, you just got to go with it. I was washing dishes and the phrase, well, the title came into my mind. This is Butt Dialing Jesus. There was a time when voices emanating from my pants would have caused concern. But now I just shrugged and pulled out my phone to hear a recording. You have reached the Son of God. I'm currently speaking with another supplicant, but please hold. Your salvation is important to me. This was followed by music. I expected celestial choirs or maybe an elevator-friendly version of My Sweet Lord, but was instead treating to acoustic Delta blues guitar. Interrupted after just a little bit by the voice of himself, greeting me by name, asking what I wanted. I was startled, didn't expect to actually get through. What's the one true religion? I asked, startled just to have something to say. All of them, he replied. None of them. I was taken aback. Huh? What? Wait, that's it? That's it, he said. Follow the golden rule. Leave the campground cleaner than you found it. Anything else? I have a lot of people on hold. I had nothing, mumbled my thanks. He said, go in peace, and broke the connection. I put down the phone and stared out the window. The guy across the street was clearing snow off the sidewalk. I never really liked that dude. But I grabbed my shovel to go lend a hand. That one kind of took a turn on me. You know, I was writing it, I was having fun with it, and then something happened that I didn't expect. I love it when you're doing something and it tells you, you thought this, but maybe that instead, or that as well. So I'm going to end with a couple of sonnets. The first one is by this guy you might have heard of, some Shakespeare dude. He's not on social media, but I heard he had a pretty good following back in the day. I think my favorite of his is Sonnet 29, When in Disgrace with Fortune in Men's Eyes. When in disgrace with fortune and men's eyes, I all alone beweep my outcast state, and trouble deaf heaven with my bootless cries, and look upon myself and curse my fate, wishing me like to one more rich in hope, featured like him with friends possess, desiring this man's art and that man's scope, with what I most enjoy contented lease. Yet in these thoughts, myself almost despising, happily I think on thee. And then my state, like to the lark at break of day, rising from sullen earth, sings hymns at heaven's gate. For thy sweet love remembered such wealth brings, that then I scorn to change my state with kings. And just a little background about this next sonnet. Some years ago, I had an experience that I've had a number of times since, but the first time it happened, I said, oh God, I got to write about this. And I usually write in blank verse, free verse. I was trying to write a poem about this experience that wasn't working. So I was thinking it's got to be kind of formal and old-fashioned, and the narrator is a person who is from another time, a time maybe that is past. It needs to be a sonnet. So this is, and I'll end with this. This is sonnet for the young woman who offered me her seat on the train. Your smile illuminates the gloomy morn. The sunshine warms a chilly mountain lake. Before me sits a beauty not yet born when decades trailed already in my wake. You stir as if to rise and yield your place, but I'll return your smile and shake my head while hoping in the moment that my face will show no hint of all the thoughts unsaid. I could have sung your mother lullabies, yet still a young man lingers in my heart, who once delighted in a young girl's sighs. The time has passed for him to play that part. He read his lines upon a perfumed stage, but as they will, the years have turned the page. Thank you. And now it gives me wicked great pleasure to introduce Mary Bonina. Mary Bonina's latest poetry collection, Lunch in Chinatown, represents a synthesis between her work with immigrants and refugees, teaching language and literacy, and her creative work writing poetry. A finalist for the Goldfarb Fellowship from Virginia Center for the Creative Arts, and awarded several residencies, including at the VCCA retreat, Moulin and M.F.A in Auvillar, France. Lunch in Chinatown is from Červená Barva Press, which also published her poetry collections, Living Proof, Clear IT, her memoir, My Father's Eyes, and will bring out her novel, My Way Home, in 2025. Shall we dance?
How elegant.
Oh, elephant? Did you say, are you calling me?
What's that you say about elephants? Well, it's great to be last for a change. I'm usually first because my name starts with a B, my surname. I always sat in front of the nun in school, with the seating plan alphabetically. I'm going to read from Lunch in Chinatown mostly, but I want to read, well, entirely, except for one poem that I'm going to read from. It's a new poem. It hasn't been published anywhere. And I think it's probably a good segue into the other poems because it references a climactic tragedy, and a lot of the students that I had who were adults working in Boston hospitals and banks, and also through the literacy program at the Cambridge Public Library. Many of them were refugees, not just immigrants. They were leaving the countries they lived in for a variety of reasons. Sometimes, the devastation related to weather, or sometimes war, or a whole lot of other possibilities. And so this new poem is called Water Lilies. And it's one of those weather poems. The way they dry out here in winter on tall stalks, looking like lamps in the pond at Great Meadows and at Black Snook in the preserve close to where I live. I saw last summer the water choked with them and thought ducks could catch webbed feet in the underwater tangle of roots growing like rope hair from the bulbs. It's the bulbs the women of South Sudan go after to feed their children. They grind seeds high in protein, make sludge barely palatable, and luckily not poison. And so it is that everything I used to know and love about water lilies begins to recede, though the floodwaters in Sudan did not, taking the fields used for farming. I read this somewhere, wondered how many people know this flooding led to famine, know that this is the way children survive now, on water lilies. And the image I'd had of them fading now, a different beauty, less vivid than what I've learned of these strong women, lilies themselves, equal to Monet's at the Tuileries in Paris, or those I've seen when driving in the country, pink, white, yellow, flashing in my peripheral vision, in ponds, on farmland, off the roadside. And this new realization, stronger too than cold winter walks under a pewter sky, when I risked falling into a night not quite frozen pond, hoping to reach the stalks of dried up lilies, not for the sustenance of my children, only to take home for the tall floor vase. And the lily women are more beautiful too than the wealth of lilies choking Black Snook in summer. I forget all about those other water lilies. Now I remember water lilies only as women who feed themselves to their children, the women of South Sudan. So my students were adults, and most of them were working at Boston hospitals and banks. Some of these poems, many of these poems were published in journals, and I kind of put this whole manuscript in a drawer. And one of those days during the pandemic, when I was cleaning things out, weeding out my file cabinet, which probably many of you resorted to. I found them, and I remember saying to Mark, my husband, look at this, what I found. And he said, why don't you publish those? So finally they're published, and there's some new ones too. Some of them take place in the classroom, most of them, and then a couple of them take place in the neighborhood or, in shopping, whatever. There's an introduction from Patrick Sylvain, who is the assistant professor of global transnational post-colonial literature at Simmons University. And he's also the lead author on Education Across Borders, essays from Beacon Press. I'm going to begin with the first poem in the book, the title poem, Lunch in Chinatown. The day after Christmas, the sidewalks were slippery with snow and ice. Wei Wei took my arm as we started across Nealon Street to Tyler for dim sum. At first, I didn't know why she would hold on, not until I looked down, making sure my feet were on safe ground, and I saw she wore bright yellow summer shoes, like ballet flats, but with hard soles. The air was bitter cold and smoky and scented with ginger and sesame flavored noodles were what we ordered, both of us pointing to the same thing on the menu, the number 12, translated into English for me. And we laughed at what we had in common. Certainly language wasn't it. I knew nothing about Wei Wei then, not even that she had worked as a doctor in China's largest hospital. I only knew she didn't like the cold, that she was afraid of falling, and that she wanted to learn English very much. So I really hope that these poems, some people might read these poems and feel, sort of protected against a lot of the vitriol that people are hearing these days, and a lot of the things that seem to be coming in the future here in this country. Number 37 Bennett Street. This building was part of the campus at New England Medical Center in Chinatown. And my classes were held in all these sort of, whatever room was available. Once it was in a radioactive lab, and it was supposed to be a lunch brown bag class, and there was a sign that said no eating or drinking on the wall. It was really encouraging. But this looked like an old doctor's surgery or something. It had all this old furniture and these empty apothecary jars in a oak cabinet. And anyway, this is number 37 Bennett Street. And this person who features in this poem actually is he was an English speaker from Jamaica, but he spoke a kind of patois, and he wanted to learn as much as he could. So he was in this class. Number 37 Bennett Street. A quiet moment on the third floor in the stuffy makeshift classroom on the edge of Chinatown, and something in one of the shopping bags in the corner moves. There are always shopping bags. The students work at the medical center, buy groceries in the Chinese markets at lunch hour, save time, money. Winston stands up. It's his bag. Don't worry, it's my fish. Then he's holding up a plastic bag, a Ziploc bag full of water and angelfish, saying, I mind fish, meaning it is his hobby. I was often surprised by my students. Many of them had actually professional jobs in the countries they came from, and they came here and not knowing the language. They were working in service jobs at the hospital in maintenance, or doing phlebotomy, or cashiering in the cafeteria. But they knew things, and this lesson on this is called examples. It gave me that impression for sure. Pressed to explain the word philosophy on page 38 in the English practice book, Andre, a Haitian, helps me out. Descartes, he asks. He knows, can explain to the others who speak French. Then all I have left to do is find a way to help the Chinese understand. First I try Lao Tzu, then I try Confucius. Yes, Confucius. Confucius works for them all. 2. On another day, I ask, have you ever met a famous person? Felix from Guatemala says he once met B.B. King. Ethiopian Hago says he met the governor. And Andre says, I met Superfly Snooker. Superfly Snooker? A wrestler, Andre explains. I saw him on Nealon Street buying a lottery ticket the day before his match at Boston Garden. He shook my hand. That's the same person who knew the word philosophy, which is great. So this is a poem about teaching the past tense. Let's talk only about the past today. Where were you born? They begin talking all at once, saying the names of the countries they came from: Haiti, Guatemala, Ethiopia, China. Anna puts her right hand to her forehead, trying to keep her eyebrows from knitting together, remembering how she found her way out, left Central America, came to Boston after she lived for a time in New Orleans. And Andre shudders, unable to forget Haiti, the Duvaliers, the earthquake. The Chinese women in class used to have very traditional names. Here, they were given American names: Nancy, Jenny, and Carlene, who says an Irish man, someone her father knew, named her. Hagos, the Ethiopian, says, not somberly, just matter-of-factly, my country, lot of people dead. So there were heavy moments in these classes, for sure. And then there were lighter moments. I learned a lot from them, not just about, their situations, their lives before they came here, or what they were going through here, but I also learned a lot about what I didn't know or what never occurred to me. This is called a favorite question. One day in class, Mei Jing asked me about her Boston address. She struggled, her brow wrinkled, and she told me she lives on St. Botolph Street. She wanted to know why. So I asked, don't you like where you live? I missed the point, so she did what I do when I'm not being understood. Got up from her seat, went to the easel, made a diagram, and used a lot of drama and underlined the abbreviations for Saint and Street, asking again, why? She wanted me to know that I had missed the obvious. It was the plain and simple fact that Saint and Street share the same abbreviation. I mean, I must say I had never considered that, but clearly Mei Jing was shocked. A saint is like the Buddha, yes? I knew nothing about this saint, but Mei Jing was arguing Botolph's case, upset about reverence denied, which must be deserved for him to have been given such a title. It upset her greatly to bring a saint down to street level. And then I remembered reading of the thousands of the faithful who flock every week to Shangmei Temple, bearing gifts for the Buddha, prostrating themselves before the statue's feet, offering money, jasmine garlands, praying, and making their petitions known. So I had a lot to learn in these classes, really. So I'm going to read another past tense poem. This is called More of the Past. And it's a prose poem, really. How did you meet your wife? I asked Andre the younger of the two Haitian men in class. Past tense was a lesson today. The history of love and marriage seemed as good a subject as any for practice. I had called on Andre because I was certain he had a wife. I didn't know yet about the others, but Andre's wife, Giselle, was in my beginner's class, still learning the present tense of the verb to be. How did I meet my wife? My wife, I see her on the street. You see her? I ask. He struggles, then corrects himself, begins to speak more carefully. I saw her, he says. Then he hesitates, shrugs, just as he always does whenever he knows he is going to make a mistake. She likes to go to the movies, so every afternoon, 2 o'clock, we go to the movies. Late in the day, the sun streams in on this wing of the hospital building where class is held for hospital employees. Past tense, I coach. I know they have no time or money to go to the movies now. Although it is my rule to correct my students, I enjoy Andre telling his story just as if he is now at this time in his life meeting his wife, as if telling me, one of his friends, what is new with him. He puts me on that bright street brimming with activity in Port-au-Prince. I can see Giselle, a young girl with her friends all standing around her. They don't giggle, they feign aloofness. And Andre approaches the group as he approaches his English class, shyly and respectfully. Everyone in the makeshift classroom smiles. Who knows what this room is generally used for? Occupational therapy, a place for seminars, family conferences. This moment, though, the room is reserved for Andre's story. I'm going to end with a poem that happened. This poem happened. It actually happened to me at Whole Foods one afternoon, where I went for a couple of things I couldn't find anywhere else. That's when I go to Whole Foods. Savant at Whole Foods. At the supermarket express checkout, my 2 items on the counter: a carton of milk, some tomatillos. On the tomatillos, no label. The cashier needs a code to calculate cost. I say, tomatillos? She shakes her head, calls out to a clerk passing by, holds up the eco-plastic bag of fruit. She asks for the code. What number? The man recites the number. He says, just as I have, tomatillos. Then the price appears on the cashier's screen. I want to know if the man knows the code for every item sold in store. And he says he does. Really? And because I'm impressed, he wants me to know how much more he knows. For instance, coffee. The store sells 12 kinds fresh ground. He can identify each one by its aroma. A whiff of hurrah from the Ethiopian highlands is not the same as Arabian mocha grown in the mountains of Yemen. He distinguishes Indonesian varieties, Sumatra, Java, Sulawesi, catches the scent of Guatemalan, Antigua volcanic, and from Costa Rica, Margarita and Cashier. The man knows also this fruit I'm buying. These small green globes have existed before humans ever did, found 50 million years before, and he knows the Aztecs named them.
Oh.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for being here. This was great. Thanks again, Jane.
Thank you all for joining us here tonight. Let's give the poets another round of applause. We have some book personnel, poets will be signing books. If you could all please put your chairs up against one of the walls, that'd be very grateful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.